Once upon a time, in the sunny, cheerful kingdom of Glimmerdale, there lived a princess named Elara. Now, Elara was not a bad princess. In fact, she was quite kind. But she had one tiny, enormous problem. She was absolutely, positively obsessed with her crown. It wasn't just any crown. It was the royal sapphire crown, a glittering ring of gold set with 7 perfect, sparkling blue sapphires. Her grandmother had worn it, and her great-grandmother before that. Every morning, Elara would polish the sapphires with a special silk cloth until they shone like bits of the sky. Every afternoon, she would practice walking with it, perfectly balanced on her head, holding a heavy book on her own head to improve her posture. She truly believed the crown was what made her a princess. One afternoon, as she was admiring her reflection for the 1000th time, her father, the king, chuckled. "Elara, my dear, you spend more time with that crown than with your own subjects." "But father," Elara said, touching the cool metal, "it's what shows everyone. I'm a princess." The king knelt beside her. "The crown only shows that you are a princess, Elara. It doesn't make you one. A true leader is known by their actions, not by the jewels on their head." Elara nodded politely, but in her heart, she didn't quite believe him. Actions? What actions were more visible than a crown sparkling in the sunlight? That night, as she placed her precious crown on its velvet stand, she whispered, "It's a good thing you're so visible." She fell asleep, dreaming of sapphires. But when she woke up the next morning, something was terribly wrong. The crown was still on its stand, but it wasn't there. She could feel the cool metal when she touched it, and she could lift it. It had its familiar weight. But when she held it in front of her face, she saw right through it. She could see the pattern of the wallpaper behind it. "The crown! It's gone!" "Well, it's not gone, but it's invisible!" she shrieked, running to find her parents. The king and queen rushed in. The king reached out, and his hand closed around the invisible circlet. "Remarkable," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. He couldn't see it either. The queen, however, looked thoughtful. "Perhaps," she said gently, "it's a sign. A reminder, my dear." But Elara was too panicked to think about signs. "I can't be a princess with an invisible crown," she wailed. "No one will know who I am." Her first thought was to prove it was there. She marched into the throne room, holding the invisible crown carefully on her head. The royal advisor, a man named Grumble, squinted at her. "Good morning, princess. Are you feeling quite well? You're walking very stiffly." "Can't you see it, Lord Grumble?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. "See what, Your Highness?" "My crown," she cried. Lord Grumble peered at her head. He saw only her perfectly brushed hair. "Ah, of course. A very airy crown, I'm sure," he mumbled, and went back to his papers. Elara was devastated. She tried everything. She stood in the brightest sunlight. She wore a dark velvet dress to make it stand out. Nothing worked. The crown remained stubbornly invisible. The palace servants began to whisper. "Have you seen the princess's new—" "Nothing," they giggle. "She keeps touching her head like she has a headache." Feeling more invisible than her crown, Elara decided she had to do something drastic. She would have to prove she was a princess through her actions, just as her father had said. But what actions? Later that day, she wandered into the village at the foot of the castle hill. She was still wearing her fine dress, and she kept one hand on her head, a habit she couldn't break, just to make sure the invisible crown was still there. The villagers, who usually waved and bowed, just looked at her strangely. Then she heard a sad little sound. It was a sniffle. Coming from behind the baker's shop, she found a small boy, no older than 6, sitting on an overturned bucket. His knees were scraped and his face was streaked with tears. "What's wrong?" Ilara asked, forgetting for a moment to keep her hand on her head. The boy looked up. His eyes were red. "My dog, Pip," he wailed. "He ran into the woods and he won't come out. He's stuck by the old stone bridge and he's scared." Ilara looked toward the woods. They were dark and a little bit scary. A proper princess, she thought, would wait for a royal huntsman to fetch the dog. But then she remembered her father's words. She looked at the boy's tear-streaked face. This was an action, not an appearance. "Show me where," she said. They ran to the edge of the woods. True to his word, a small, fluffy terrier was huddled by the old bridge, whimpering. The bridge was just a single, slippery log over a fast-running stream. The dog was too frightened to cross. Without thinking, Ilara stepped onto the log. It wobbled. She held her arms out for balance. For a moment, she felt a panic worse than when her crown had vanished. But she took a deep breath and focused on the little dog. Step by careful step, she inched across. When she reached the other side, she scooped the trembling Pip into her arms. He licked her face gratefully. Getting back was even harder with a wriggly puppy, but she managed. When she placed Pip safely in the boy's arms, his face broke into the biggest, sunniest smile she had ever seen. "Oh, thank you, miss, thank you," he cried. "It was nothing," Ilara said, brushing mud from her dress. "I'm the—" She stopped. She had been about to say the princess. But it didn't seem to matter. The boy didn't care who she was. He just cared that she had helped. On her way back to the castle, she saw an old woman struggling to carry a heavy basket of laundry up the hill. Her back was bent, and she had to stop every few steps. Ilara rushed over. "Here, let me help you with that." The old woman looked up, surprised. "Why, thank you, dear." Together, they carried the basket all the way to the woman's cottage at the top of the hill. The woman invited her in for a glass of cool water. They chatted, and Ilara learned the woman's name was Mabel, and she had lived in Glimmerdale her whole life. Word began to spread through the village. Not about a princess with an invisible crown, but about a kind girl who had rescued a dog and helped old Mabel with her laundry. People started pointing, but not in a mean way. "See that girl there?" they'd whisper. "She's the one who helped the baker's son." The next day, Ilara returned to the village. This time, she didn't wear her finest dress, but a simpler one. She didn't walk with her hand on her head. She spent the morning helping the baker sweep his floor and organize his sacks of flour. In the afternoon, she played with the village children, teaching them a clapping game she used to play with her nanny. She wasn't a princess visiting the village. She was just Ilara, who was becoming a friend. Days turned into a week. Ilara woke up one morning and, out of habit, reached for her crown on the stand. She could still feel its weight, but she didn't bother trying to see it. She simply placed it on her head, a gesture that now felt familiar and comforting, even if it was invisible. That afternoon, the king announced a grand feast. All the villagers were invited. Ilara stood with her parents, greeting everyone as they arrived. She saw the baker, who gave her a warm smile and a small loaf, still warm from the oven. She saw the little boy, who waved excitedly, his dog Pip yapping at his heels, and she saw Mabel, who gave her a little nod of respect. As the feast began, Lord Grumble stood up to give a speech. "We are here to celebrate the bounty of our kingdom," he began, but then he paused. "But I must also speak of a curious thing. For the past week, I have heard stories from the village. Stories of a girl with a kind heart and helping hands." He looked directly at Ilara. "And it has come to my attention that this girl is our very own Princess Ilara. It seems, Your Highness, that you have been proving something to us all." Ilara felt a blush creep up her cheeks, but it was a warm, happy blush. At that moment, a shaft of late afternoon sunlight streamed through the high window of the throne room. It hit the top of Ilara's head, and something magical happened. A faint, beautiful shimmer appeared. It was a delicate outline of gold, and within it 7 tiny points of light twinkled like blue stars. Her crown! It was back! But it was different. It wasn't a heavy, glittering thing anymore. It was a delicate, radiant shimmer, a crown made of light and kindness. Everyone gasped. The crown was more beautiful than it had ever been. The king walked over to his daughter, his eyes shining with pride. "You see, Ilara," he said softly, "it was never about the crown making you a princess. You made the crown a true royal crown with your actions." Ilara touched her head, and where she once felt cold metal, she now felt a warm, gentle glow. She understood now. The crown wasn't for others to see. It was a part of her. It was the shimmer of a kind deed, the golden glow of a helping hand, the sapphire sparkle of a brave heart. And from that day on, Princess Ilara ruled not from a throne, but from the hearts of her people, her invisible crown, now made of the most brilliant light of all, shining for everyone to feel, even if they couldn't always see it. Moral of the story: true worth isn't found in what you wear, but in how much you care. Leadership isn't about being seen, it's about the good you do when no one is watching.